Okay, good evening. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. For anybody who does not know who I am, I'm Robin Gomez, the Madera Beach City Manager. Again, thank you for coming out and giving us your time, hopefully your comments, your thoughts. If you have not, there's a handout. It's a 5-page handout in the back. There's a couple on the tables. There are 5 pages of essentially the coastline from 155th down to Johns Pass Park. And I will go over in the presentation. That is to be marked up should you choose to want to mark it up when I get into the details of what our swim zones are or should not be. I do have one question. Has anybody who has been living here since at least 1983? So one, two, just okay. Three, four. The reason I mentioned that, because that's really when the city initially well, I'm saying in a little bit of research, in some research that's been done, that's when swim zones were adopted by ordinance in the city. And then another section were added, and more sections were added in the early 90s, and then some word revisions in 2013. But essentially, has anybody been to a meeting here in Madera Beach on water safety or swim zones? No. Okay, so good. So this meeting should have occurred a few months ago. So for those who are familiar with what's been happening, and I'm going to go right to the issue, the city, in our attempts to create more safety, made a decision that was approached to me to switch out our buoys and put poles and pilings. So is anyone not familiar with that issue or that story? No, I think everybody is. Okay. So the reason being to better mark the area, the swim areas and areas for boaters, keep swimmers where they're supposed to be, keep boaters so that they do not go beyond a certain boundary. We made that decision because they are much more durable. The idea is that they would last 7 to 10 years and an estimated cost of around $25,000 to $35,000 to put pilings and then put signs on them. When the initial pilings went out before they were actually finalized is when we began to receive calls from people. Those things look heinous. What are you doing? You've ruined my beach view. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to send you back from where you came from, which isn't as bad as other comments that city managers tend to get, but it was well understood. So we made the decision to remove them. Yes, is that a waste of money? I will tell you that yes, it is, and I will admit that that's what it is. And I take full responsibility for that decision as the city manager. We should have had these meetings before to get input and to figure out what should the swim zones be? Two, how should we mark them or identify them? I believe some of you, I think, I know Mr. Tilka brought a copy of the ordinance, but it's in the agenda that talks about our swim zones, and they are to be marked by buoys. We then obtain a permit, or we have obtained a permit through the Florida Department of Environmental Protection or Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission to identify. Does anybody know why they have to be identified by FWC? Anybody who?
Federal waters?
For boaters, because they go, and Megan Webb, our Public Works Director, can correct me, because they become a latitude and a longitude or on your charts. So you do not, so that when you're out boating and you're looking, they will pop up so that, again, boaters don't crash into them. So, which is what many people stated, oh, well, those are going to be hazards for boaters. I mean, there's a lot of hazards already out there. They were, for any of you who saw them, they were listed or installed in a line. If I'm mistaken, the photos that I took, they were in a straight line, et cetera, so many feet apart. So anyway, so now we're here. Obviously, poles or pilings are not popular and have not been or would not be. Clearwater Beach has had them for many, many years. Several residents asked, well, no beach around here has them. They do. They are spaced farther apart. A little bit different about Clearwater Beach that you may or may not know, from the South Jetty, where one of their resorts, the Opal Sands, which is where the public sand begins. All of that is a public beach all the way up past Pier 60 to the Clearwater Beach Hilton. Then the Clearwater Beach Hilton is the first parcel that owns sand out to the mean high water line. So for any of you that have ever been up there, once you get to the Hilton, the public swim zone ends and it is now available for motorized craft, mainly smaller boats and jet skis. Then you go just north of that a couple 100 feet, then the public swim zone continues until you get to the next large public parking lot where Frenchie's on the sand. Anyway, so that's what but they were spaced far apart. And I believe that's part of our issue is over the years, all of the buoys, and then when we inserted the pilings or the poles, there were too many of them. But that's what was communicated back to the city. So what should they be? I don't know. That's what we need to gather from all of you. How far should they be spaced? So that's where we are. And then the last part of this will be what else can we add for water safety? One discussion since I've been here is whether we add a lifeguard program. Because most of you are aware, only the county at Fort DeSoto, Sandkey Park, and Fred Howard Park have lifeguards, and Clearwater. None of the other beach communities, and I don't believe have ever had a lifeguard program, but as far as I've been told, there have not been lifeguard programs. I first came to Pinellas County in 1992, but mainly in Clearwater, and I do remember seeing lifeguards. Then I moved to Clearwater in 1996, and since that time, Clearwater and Pinellas County have been the only two city government to have a lifeguard type program. So again, here's what to discuss: our water safety, swimmers versus boaters, our swim zones, what should they be, whether we have a lifeguard program. If anybody else has anything else to add about water safety, this would be a good opportunity to add it. So I don't think there's much that all of you are not aware. Obviously, we get millions of people that come to Madeira Beach every year, and quite a few, I'm gonna guess at least 1 million, but probably more, do visit our beach. That is the draw, in addition to Johns Pass Village and Boardwalk. So hopefully all of you already know that and know that a lot more than I do. However, in the 2 years and 6 months that I've been here, I do walk our beach almost every single day. Every single day that I've been here, and I will say for the last 2 years, a lot more than in the first 6 months that I was here, because the first day that I moved to Madeira Beach, I fell and I tore my quadriceps tendon, so I was not able to walk for a good 30 days. And then I started hobbling for the next 2 months, and then finally come around July of 2022, was I able to walk on my own and then really see lots of different things. Swimmers versus boaters, obviously we want to keep them apart and as far apart as possible is what many residents have explained to me, but certainly keep boats and swimmers safe, boats where they need to be, swimmers where they should be. And we can only do that by obviously setting the proper swim zones, markers, and keep everybody informed, educated, etc. I don't know if many of you are aware, we currently have 4 swim zones that have been identified, and they were adopted by city commissions in prior years. Again, the last one I believe was 1993, that created these 4 swim zones. Johns Pass Waterway to 131st Avenue, and I'll get to a map of it in a moment. Pinellas County Park, so essentially from about 143rd and a half to 145th and a half, where the Pinellas County Madeira Beach Access County Park, that is a swim zone that a Madeira Beach City Commission adopted years ago. I skipped to Archibald Park because that was created before letter C on the screen. Ocean Sands to 155th Avenue, which is a total of about 1,177 square feet, less a 232 linear feet area north of Serena. And that was apparently created to allow motorized boats to go in and out of this section. Not sure why. I think we'd have to go back and look at the minutes of the meeting back in, I believe that was in 1993 when that was created. But That's the issue. So the swim zones, you have the 5 pages in front of you are essentially the coastline from the north, starting on 155th, and each page tells you where it begins, where it ends. And if you'd like to mark up or where would you like the swim zones to be? Again, the majority of people who do swim, and the reason we have the swim zones we do, or the 4 swim zones, is because this is where the majority of people who do go to our beach tend to gather. They tend to gather here because there are 4 parking lots at these 4 locations, even though there's one missing up here. Does anybody know which one is missing? Yeah, Kitty Stewart Park is not up here. That has not been designated a swim zone, likely because it is not very north-south lengthwise. It's not very long. It's, I think, a 150 feet parcel. It used to have buoys. So again, is that one to add? Probably would be good to keep boats out, but either way. So that's what was created. As I mentioned earlier, where should they be locations? How do we mark them? I'm probably 100% correct in saying buoys would be the preferred method rather than anything else to mark the swim areas. But if there's newer technology out there or some other item, then certainly we would be creative. And again, the key is to educate and inform and remind folks where to put. Buoys are about roughly 14,000. If we have to replace them, which we have had to replace them last year and the year before, again, a reason why we looked at and installed the poles that gave us an average lifespan of as much as, I wrote 5 to 10 years, but really up to 10 years. It was estimated 7 to 10 years, all things considered.
So what's the cost differential over 10 years between the buoys versus?
Well, if we have to replace the buoys every year, we're looking at about $140,000 over a 10-year period versus $32,000 for. That's the worst case scenario if they are washed away every year. The likelihood of that happening, maybe. Right, we had 2 storms. It's not a normal thing. So if you had to do it 4 times over a 10-year period, you could just do the math. No, quite a few of them ended up in some of them were gone. We didn't find them. I know 1 or 2 ended up in Redington Shores or Indian Shores, St. Pete Beach. So, I mean, I think Redington Beach, I don't remember, Treasure Island kind of ended up all over. So that's what we're looking to figure out a way to do that.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. So the way that we do swim buoys, and I've been with the city for 9.5 years, we have tried several different ways of installing these. Currently, what has worked the best, and we've done trial periods, is we do a concrete base, which is made out of a 55-gallon plastic drum with a this is all stainless steel material, and we're lucky if they last a year. Not to mention with the buoys, if you look at I think I still have 3 that are out there right now of the 32 that we are supposed to have. And they do not just wash ashore with a hurricane. For instance, Redington just put out 10 and they have 2 left. And they just did that in February. We've had no serious storms. So the concrete bases, they move, the chains, they rub. You put metal into salt water, what's gonna happen? There is no way to make them last longer than, I'm going to say, 1.5 years if we're lucky. So on a 1.5 year basis, we are replacing, I would say, at least 80% of those buoys.
How about concrete and plastic containers?
I'm sorry?
Concrete and plastic containers.
That's not going to change the metal. Maybe I should have probably brought some pictures. So we do concrete bases with a stainless steel eye bolt with very thick chain. We have tried flexi paving that chain. We have tried putting zinc on that chain. We have tried covering that in like a neoprene type sleeve. We have tried what Treasure Island does, which is a stainless steel rope with plastic around it. And the only thing that has lasted long enough is the method that we use. So we have tried. It's just.
Well, we'll keep looking for other
course.
options.
Absolutely.
I think that's what we need to do. Oh, sorry.
So if you're putting in a drum, it's gonna tip over, it's gonna roll, why aren't you putting like a pyramid type base and embedding it into the sand a little bit deeper?
You
know,
can.
you have moorings where they're fixed into the seabed and boats moor on top of those. They hook up and moor, and those are not moving. So if you put a larger piece of concrete in a pyramid type shape or something like that, and embed it down deeper, I don't think you're gonna have that movement.
So that's a totally separate permit. That is
Yep.
the way everybody around here does a little bit of a different method. Treasure Island does square concrete bases. They still move. Concrete and water in a serious storm or anything like that is going to move, which then it's not necessarily the concrete. It's the method of securing the buoy to the base.
I understand that. I understand the buoys. Just replacing the buoys will be a whole lot cheaper than having to worry about replacing the base. If the base stays still and the buoy breaks off, you can go ahead and reattach it and put a new buoy on there, and that keeps the cost down.
But also understand that with the bases moving and the sand moving on the seafloor, once those bases, they get covered up by sand.
Right.
So you may not always find them. So yes, that is a possibility, but you still then have to replace the chain, which is probably
Right.
one of the most expensive, and the buoys. The buoys alone, 32 a year, is over $5,000. And then you add the chain on top of it with the other stainless. So the concrete base is not necessarily the most expensive.
The problem I had with the pilings, and I know you say boats are gonna have GPS and stuff. There's boats that don't have GPSs that might be coming in. You might have the crabbers and things like that. There was no warning lights, nothing that were put on those posts.
What about the channel markers and the waterways? There's channel markers right here out on the waterway. Same thing. There's no beacon light on any of the channel markers except for the state waterway. That's the only. These were reflective. These are the same specs that the channel marker signs are that are in the intercoastal.
So we're still looking, obviously, there's solutions out there. We need to figure out the best method and how to make it obviously the most effective and
Right.
cost effective, but be able to withstand.
And I think talking to an engineer may help provide a solution.
Oh, there's very expensive ways to put in these buoys. You can do helicoil piles, which will cost upwards of $50,000 per helicoil.
Most of those are put in the inside and the inshore.
Here, Doug.
No. Nobody puts them out in the Gulf. Our barges aren't insured to go out into the Gulf. And there's not a big barge in Pinellas County. So you'd have to get somebody from Tampa or Sarasota to do it. And it'd be very, very expensive.
We're talking
the helical piling
200
is the right way to do it because the base would stay, but it's also very costly.
So it's a $14,000 annual, $14,000 annual cost. That's your experience, I guess, right? In terms of
it has been our experience, yeah. Okay. I mean, that's worst case scenario. Yes,
worst
to replace
case meaning it's not an average, it's the worst year, or
on average, yes, that's what the cost is. Yes.
Why now? Meaning, are we having boating accidents? Are we having swimming problems? Are we having problems? Are you worried about a liability down the road? Is it, I mean, why now all of a sudden?
Because we were going to replace the buoys again for a third time and realized if we put poles and pilings, more durable, last longer, save you money over time. That was the basis, the genesis for going to pilings, poles. Well, because
We're not permitted.
Because, well, right, it's not permitted. Second, the city had never done that. Not that that's the right answer, but there's a process in order to do that. And the city adopted these swim zones by ordinance because that's what happened. So that will be the next step. Do we keep the swim zones that we have? That's what we're looking for your input. Expand them, contract them. All 2 miles, make it a swim zone. I've heard that from several people that that would be the best thing to do and the safest. But again, not my decision to make to do that. We were simply replacing the buoys because they had been washed away 2 consecutive years due to Ian and Adalia. And so now we're at this, we need to do something and faster rather than wait a few more months. So, but we need public input from what was communicated to me. Let's get input and see where we need to go.
Also to add, we are,
Yeah, they've been around since the 80s and 90s.
well, so we have to do by FWC, by the permit that we are issued, we have to do an audit of all of our waterway markers, which includes the intercoastal waterway. The one on the beach, well, the 2 on the beach, because there's 2 different permits, we are in violation of them. So losing them from the storms because we don't have anything out there. We were in the process of doing an audit when I reached out to FWC to request, could we change the material to ensure that they actually stay longer? Because the only time that we were actually in compliance with our permit is when we first placed them out there. Because typically we've placed them several years in a row and not even a month later we lose one. So it happens every single time.
So I can speak about the swim zone from 131st to Johns Pass. The reason that was passed is because of the jet skiers that were coming into the area and were coming up to the beach.
Not surprised by
And that was the reason that area was designated. And I don't know if that became an issue further north of there. And so I think when the people are renting the skis, they're given some instructions, I think, as to where they can and can't go. Now, the only other thing that I've seen is typically you won't see the power boats coming in so close down in my area. I have seen it up north there, but maybe.
No, I've seen 2 larger boats in my 2 years, and they were around 138th both times.
Yeah.
So.
It just kept going in and out.
Yeah, that can be thrown.
Yeah, and jet skis are constantly going through the swim where people are swimming. I know it's not a designated swim area, but our population of tourists has increased so much everywhere as a swim area now. There is no non-swim area. So I think we have to protect our swimmers because when you see a jet ski going through a bunch of swimmers, that's scary.
Sure.
It's so scary. And these people just rent these things and they may instruct them, but they're not listening. And a lot of these are just kids or they're drinking. So that's my opinion anyway.
Paul?
Yes, a question. Is it on?
Is
Yes.
each buoy anchored? Yes.
Every buoy is anchored with the concrete base with the chain. Yes. Yes.
Use the rope or line?
Yes, we actually use that on the north side of town where we don't have as strong of a current and it failed first. We use exactly what Treasure Island uses, which is pretty thick stainless. I don't have the specs on it. You mean like nylon rope?
Spectra rope?
No, we've never used that.
It's a vulture. State. Okay, something we'll look into using a Spectra line. Underwater. So go ahead and.
Listening to everybody and my
opinion would be to have the buoys for the whole 2 miles.
Yeah.
For the simple reason, not everybody's going to go to a designated with a lifeboat. They don't do it now, they're not gonna do it later. You have swim signs in John's Pass.
People swim, right?
So, so you do your basic areas, and then periodically, so you have a line all the way down the 2 miles, have buoys. Now, I go to the beach quite a lot. There's a lot of people, but there's 4 or 5 people that swim by out on the second sandbar, like you're Olympic swimmers.
Yes,
You know, and they go down and they come back.
sure.
And since we don't have anything late, you go there on a, let's say a holiday weekend, you have all kinds of people that want to come in this beach. And it's getting dangerous because I'm a boat owner. I go out there. I can't see somebody swimming.
Right, especially, right, yes. Yeah. Right.
For the 2 miles. And then the enforcement. See, that's the other thing. We don't have any enforcement at John's Pass when these kids jump in the water and there's this big sign like this that Megan put up. And I mean, I see them. They don't care. They need tickets.
Yeah.
Are you
Well-
talking about on the beach side or under
Yeah,
the bridge?
under the bridge.
And
Yeah, under the
yeah,
bridge,
te-
yeah. Yeah, well, hopefully that'll go away when that's dredged. But that's a temporary solution.
Start first. 2.5 years ago. The water that goes through John's Pass is 2.5 miles an hour at a kind of slant tide.
Mhm.
A man cannot swim.
Right, yeah, it's too dangerous.
Put lifeguards there, they get in the water, they get.
Sure. Chuck, you?
How about the posts cut down to the low tide mark?
They
Put
were.
they were at the low tide mark?
They were 7 feet above the mean high tide. So you have to make sure that there's enough,
So this is an image of
what it was.
what, well, when it was originally installed, this is the finished product. And if you look at the one on the left, it's right next to a buoy.
Yeah.
So,
That's a buoy.
Well, and so that's obviously not low tide. So if you do the post at low tide and then a buoy connected to the top of the post, so the post would never be seen.
Never be seen.
Yeah, the post, if at low tide, I mean, if low tide tonight is at 7 o'clock, whatever the water is at that point, that's the low tide mark. So that would be the lowest it would be.
So you're saying to have the sign at low tide?
No,
be
no,
right at the water
no
line?
signs, posts and then a buoy connected to the post.
Put over the top of it.
On
We
top of
actually
the
talked
post.
about doing that. We
Yeah.
did talk about
I mean,
doing that.
because that's what I think the thing was is people didn't want their sunset, disturbed.
Yeah.
So if you find when the low tide is, which is coming up and I'm
coming up
sure
soon.
Doug
Yeah.
knows very well, it's, you look at low tide and John's Pass and when they're minus 0.07, you go out and that's when they're cut. And
Yeah.
that's the elevation, so they'll never really be seen unless we have super low tides. And if there are super low tides, what they're sticking up, maybe 6 inches?
So so we had talked about doing that, but the reason why the decision was to go with the signs is because if any of you have seen the buoys from the water side, you after a few months, they're faded. You can barely read them. Honestly, if you're a boater or you're a jet skier who's not from around here, you don't know what that means. It just may be it could look like a crab trap ball sticking out of the water. So we chose to go with the signs that are very visible, that you can totally tell that that area is delineated as a swim area. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Of course,
you can
yeah,
replace the
and
signs.
the
yeah.
signs are, I mean, we just did a replacement of the channel marker signs and I don't think they had been replaced in 15 years. So yes, the signs do last longer. They're more of a reflective material than the buoys. The buoys, the reflection wears off almost immediately. But we did talk about doing that. We just chose to make something that was a little bit easier to read as you're approaching that area.
So how did you feel about the community reaching out to you guys when you put the post in? How did, you know?
I mean, it was a mistake.
Oh, okay. And then just second real quick. Is there any way cause I rented jet skis one time. Well, I've rented several down here at Johns Pass. And this last one I rented, just last weekend, they have GPS systems. And is there any way you can regulate that as a city to enforce that? When you get anywhere near the beach,
It tells you.
Cuts you off. You can't go anywhere. And it makes you, it forces you to go back out and away from the beach, and then you throttle back up again. It was really neat how they did it, even out here in the intercoastal. They have the systems on their jet skis.
Security type.
And to her point, I see them all the time coming up to the beach and mooring and swimming, and then they jet ski out of there. But I didn't know if the city had any authority to.
Probably not, but
enforce
something we
that.
could look into.
You know, I get you couldn't do that with private, owners, but I thought that was pretty cool that they did that. They would not allow you to get anywhere 50 feet from anything.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was,
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah,
they
I
do
mean-
that with those little
It's the one
scooters.
right next to Woody's. I
Yeah.
can't remember.
I mean, there's certain things you can, I
Flying
mean,
high,
if anybody,
Maybe
Oh.
flying high, because I'll stop by and
yeah, we'll take a look as,
I thought that was really cool.
I mean, certain things that can be regulated over time. And if anybody 30 years ago, parasailing was an unregulated industry until there were issues.
Which one? Oh, okay, he's got the microphone.
Well, this will look all official with the mic. So I'm at the top of Madeira. I'm like a block away from the very top. And I was actually very excited about the pilings project with the signs, because I thought it was going to be finally something that these people would pay attention to, whether they're renting something or as a local boater that's going up and down the beach. The markers that get washed away all the time, I think it's the numbers speak for themselves. It's fiscally responsible to put the pilings in. It pains me to think that so many people were more worried about, the way that it looked versus the safety that was, incorporated with a serious set of signs that people couldn't ignore. I think the buoys are, in some cases are not even a suggestion for these people that are ripping up and down the beach. So I liked it. In terms of the length of the zone, fortunately, in front of my property, it is marked as a swim zone. But I certainly, it sounds like there's maybe a couple areas that we could add, but I think the most important thing is, like you guys have talked about, is we need to get something out there quickly. And I was a huge fan of the pilings. Thanks.
Lights on the pilings, did you?
No, you're not required for that. Somebody, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. I had read something online that people were saying, oh, somebody's going to ride a jet ski into it at night. Guess what, guys? Jet skis aren't allowed out at night. You have to be off the water by dark with a jet ski. So that's out. And like Megan had said, take a look on any body of water anywhere. There's wooden pilings everywhere for markers. So it's nothing to be scared of, people. It's all good.
Right. In this map up here on the screens, if you look, the little dots where it says new restricted area, ordinance 846, then 1580 feet. And then the line with the little dots, that's the placement of the buoys.
Correct.
Per our permit. And comments that came back to me were, there's probably too many. If you space them out, then it would not be as visually unappealing, disappealing, ugly, whatever word you want to call them. I think that we can request that if that is something, and then put it on our website and kind of show what that might look like. But if there are areas where the piling kind of makes sense but spread out more, that's something that could be done, or just all buoys. but perhaps spread out more? That's a question, kind of a comment as well, because I heard that from a lot of people. There were just too many of them out there. So in this section, there are 1, 2,
16.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that are visible on the screen. And it's obviously less than 1,580 feet in linear distance. So that's another aspect that, again, we were simply following what had been created and the permit that we had to get this completed when, so I don't know what your thoughts are. If we space them out a little farther, does that help? You know, that's another thing.
How about,
Yeah, go ahead.
about 5 poles spread out over 2 miles and then buoys in between?
Well, that's a mix could work as well. And just, we won't, well, I don't know. I shouldn't say it, but I'm gonna say it, why not? But Ocean Sands would not want one in front of them. Does anybody live in Ocean Sands? Yeah, they were very, very did not like them at all, but no, I'm just kidding. We'll figure it. But that's something else that we thought about, is where and to mix them. So after this, so could that is a possibility to do that as well. Okay, does anybody really look just out? No.
No.
No,
No.
no, I'm just kidding.
180.
Because people were like, you know, one was like way down, I forget which tower, but I'm like, there isn't one in front of you. It's a good 100 feet beyond your property. I can still see it because I look panoramically.
I can see out my window, maybe 3 or 4, depending on how close I actually
Right.
get to the window. I'm then you're glad to be able to see,
Mhm.
you know,
That's a swim zone. Well, and again, to repeat, this has been, Ordinance 846 was adopted, I think, back in
It should
93.
say it on the bottom of that.
On the bottom of this?
Yeah, right. Oh, sorry. Yes, this is, so the way, as Robin stated, the way that we put the pilings out were the exact locations of where the buoys were. The only difference was the change of the material.
Sorry, 1995. Ordinance 846 adopted in
Sorry.
1995. The other two in
I believe so.
85 and in 93. So this hasn't been addressed since that time. And again, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it or say anything. It obviously was not the correct thing to do. And this should have happened before. And I will continue to repeat that because that is a mistake and I own up to that mistake. So we're trying to correct it going forward. Yes.
Suggest perhaps at the end of our meeting here this evening, that you take a show of hands for each of the categories that you think of. Just
Sure.
You have the input that you need.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everyone's input, but yeah, I mean, those are really, you know, how to proceed.
I think setting.
So is there any particular liability for the city if someone gets hit by a jet ski or drowns?
I think we're always liable
Other
in
than the
some
fact that there's
sense.
a moral issue, but I mean, legally, do you have any, like a gentleman drowned a couple of weeks ago, do we have any liability for that?
Unfortunately, I mean, where the gentleman did drown was not a designated
swim
swim
zone.
area. But I think no matter what the circumstances are, anybody can come after the city. So we're never gonna not have liability with anything that happens in Madeira Beach.
All right, and going forward with, I'll just skip. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Hi, just from listening to the comments, it seems to me that the city is in favor of the buoys and not the pilings because of the complaints you got with the pilings. Is that fair? You're nodding yes and you're shaking your head no. So I'm curious.
As the person who is responsible for the maintenance of the buoys and also safety, I think that the pilings are a better choice.
Okay. You said a few minutes ago, the only difference between the pilings and the buoys was the material. And I think that's wrong. The main difference between the pilings and the buoys is the pilings stick up higher and are constant high or low, depending on the water level. Whereas the buoys move with the water level. So they're always at that height. So they're less obtrusive because they're not sticking up as high in general. Now, I'm a little confused. It seems you had a great idea of a way to attach a buoy to something, concrete or whatever, that might last longer than what we've been using in the past.
Correct.
Something to look at.
Yes. Yep.
So now, what do we attach it to? Well, I'm confused. You say those pilings, and this has already been brought up by you, those pilings last 10 years. Well, if they stay in the ground 10 years, put the pilings in, but don't have them come up even to low tide. Have them stick up a foot and then hook to that. If those pilings aren't going to move for 10 years and the mechanism you use to hook it to the buoy can last longer than a year or two, then you got to win-win.
Somebody brought that up earlier.
It's done. Yes, he brought it up.
Yeah, Chuck mentioned.
So I don't see the issue. I mean, I see the issue, obviously. I didn't mean to say that. It seems to me that if you want buoys, it can be done without the expense that we've been.
Hopefully they'll last, right?
Yes.
And that's what we will explore to make sure that they do last more than a year, don't get washed away. Absolutely.
They will still fade. They will still have to be replaced more often than a
Well,
single, yes.
unless somebody comes up with a better technology that
Correct.
they don't fade, and we'll look into that as well. But apparently that's just been what's been available is they fade. But we're not the only ones in the world that use them. So perhaps somewhere in other parts may have the technology. We just need to find it.
Probably a year and a half. If you look at the one that's at Archibald right now, it just looks like a crab trap floating. That's not ours. That is Reddington's that moved
Reddington's
south.
Aside from Clearwater, I mean, any of the other towns up and down the beach here struggling with this at all?
Yes.
I mean, if you read
Well,
those,
they all struggle with it.
Yeah,
So
I will
what are
tell
they
you.
thinking?
I'm sorry.
So what are they thinking?
Oh,
mean,
they
it-
just
They just use
spending
buoys. They
money
just replace them.
and just replacing the buoys.
Sounds like they're just accepted the situation, so they're not really.
I will say though that we do have a lot more swimmers and a lot more people visiting Madeira Beach.
Go to Madeira Beach, you can drink, you can do fireworks, you can smoke, you can do whatever the hell you want. That's why they're coming.
Well, it's not, yeah. Right, but I walk out there every day. I don't see that. Okay. I live on 143rd.
Drinking is
Drinking,
legal.
trash, fireworks. Okay. Well, they haven't banned fireworks. They didn't ban fireworks. They.
We allow it on the 4th of July.
Correct. Yeah, because we can't, yeah, we cannot prohibit it, neither can Treasure Island. No, what they did is they said you cannot litter. So if they see somebody out there with them, there's no open flames and no littering. What does a firework do? I think it does both of those.
You have a sign right out here keeping your.
Which we do.
You go out there and there's fireworks all over the ground.
Well, tell me which streets, because I'll be there this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it gets
It has
clean.
been much better. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. We also pass out over 2,500 koozies filled with trash bags every year on 4th
Every
of
4th
July,
of July.
which has been happening for the last 4 consecutive years, which makes a huge difference, a huge difference. So if anybody's lived here longer than 5 years, you can please speak to the volumes of how much cleaner Madeira Beach is. Yes.
One more question for Megan. The markers that I've seen have been constructed of like PVC pipe with caps on both ends.
The buoys?
The swim buoys?
Buoys,
Yeah.
yes.
we order them that way.
Yes, but
Yeah.
would our maintenance department be able to make them cheaper? That seems like a lot of money for PVC pipe.
It's
if
not
they-
just PVC. There's
What-
also foam and stuff that's inside of those
That's all
that
doable.
keep them floating. We don't have the staff to construct 32 buoys annually, unfortunately. That would, yeah, unfortunately, we do not.
It's good.
Megan, do you have a scuba diver on staff?
No.
Never too old to get somebody certified, I guess, if we needed to.
We've
Because if
honestly,
you-
in the 9.5 years, we've never used anybody or needed somebody for scuba diving.
Well, unless, I think you're going to repair the buoys.
Well,
If we
yeah,
had somebody on staff to do it,
If you repaired them every 6 months
right,
with a
Then you would-
diver,
you wouldn't need to replace them.
correct.
You would have to replace them if they fade out.
Yeah, if we need to find ones that are
And
last longer, or anti-fade or.
And they get covered in barnacles, which make them sink. If you try to clear off the barnacles, it creates holes in them. So there's pros and cons for both. But that's just the struggles that we've been dealing with.
One other thing that will be discussed probably at one of the upcoming work sessions, either August or September, will be addressing just boating in general. And for any of you who, I think some of you have attended where the discussions have, I'm not going to call them liveaboards, but the anchored boats out here, because a liveaboard is a houseboat. These are, anyway, how they're defined by statute. So the county did approach the city about a solution that will be having a discussion on, as I said, probably July or August. What that likely would entail is some specific enforcement where in our contract with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, we would have a dedicated, again, a possibility, this is not what's going to happen, it'll be a discussion of a dedicated marine enforcement that we have now, or that we would procure with our sheriff's law enforcement contract. It has only been the enforcement on this side of the island, not so much on this side of the island. That's what I've heard in the time I've been here from the Sheriff's Marine Unit. I will say that, and I don't know, Chief, if you have, or I don't, well, Commissioner McGeehan's been here a little over a year, but if there has been a request to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office for marine enforcement on the Gulf side. I think it's been pretty rare, and that speaks to jet skis and boats and different things. It is pretty rare that, many of you can correct me, do you typically see a Marine unit on the Gulf waters? The only times that I have seen them were when they were searching for someone. You had the Coast Guard, you had FWC, you had MB-25, you had the helicopter, the Eagle. So that's another thing that I bring it up because we're going to discuss something that may change potentially out here that could change how our waterways are enforced. So that would address those issues, or some of at least having almost like a dedicated patrol, but not something that we're doing. It will be a discussion, just so.
Right.
It has to do, and I think some of you have heard, there are mooring fields, Gulfport has one, and then there are anchoring limitation areas. So we are not interested in a mooring field, but the county did approach the city about an anchoring limitation area. So I will leave it at that because there will be discussions down the road as to whether that's even something to think about. So kind of the last, once we get to the last topic here, whether we look to have a lifeguard program or not. Any other questions, comments? I think we've gotten quite a bit of feedback, and again, we appreciate that.
So to surmise this, is there any way, I guess, as a presentation, the way I understand, there's certain areas that we've already got permitted and we can do it, but there's discussion about bringing it up to the whole entire 2 miles.
Correct,
So-
somewhere in between the existing ones and the entire 2 miles.
And so I guess everybody's very visual, so if you could do one of these things with a picture showing where you can have them, where they're permitted now, and then the possibility of what options the residents would accept.
Like up on the screen is the Surfside Towers area. So on the top of the screen, and this is only one of the 4, but this is, yeah, I'm sorry, 155th Avenue is the north, and then it goes south 526 feet. That's the northernmost swim area, which is in the agenda packet, the permit, that's what. Yeah, let me just, this is the map that shows.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've told Reddington about that, but once those move and they get set in the sand, they are merely impossible to try to drag back to where they're supposed to be. So Reddington is fully aware that it's there, because for a minute I was like, wow, that's a new buoy. When did we get that? And then I realized it's not ours.
So this map shows all the way to the left is 155th Avenue, 527 feet going south, a space of 232, and then an additional 1,100, which and essentially all the way down to the south end of Ocean Sands. So just picture from the south tower of Ocean Sands all the way up to the northern boundary of the city, excluding a 232 feet area. I don't know why, other than
That was to bring
allow boats,
motorized vessels in.
motorized vessels. That's 2 of the 4 areas that I shared with you earlier listed in the presentation.
Robin, if you do this, you have to do it all. Because it's
Well,
not fair.
yeah,
It's not fair.
Well, that, I
It's not
think that's
fair
the
For
question.
the people that you're leaving, excluding. Why aren't they getting
Yeah.
some kind of demarcation,
No,
keeping the boats and everything out? So
I'm open to the
you
ideas.
have to, if you're gonna do this, you have to do it all. You don't do it at period.
Yeah, it's also,
In or out.
as a voter, it's kind of confusing too, as to what's in and what's
Well,
out.
that's the other thing. If you just did the 5 areas, does that mean that I can bring my boat in on the beach?
Yes, it does.
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
so that, we don't want that.
I would say no, but
Come on,
I'm looking for everyone, the input is to not allow boats onto the sand at any point. That would be my suggestion, and that's what
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
And the whole thing is, the number 1 issue is safety.
Hmm.
It's safety, nothing else.
Yeah, so with that, if we were to, whatever decision we do make, if it is keeping the permit the way that it is, we do not have to do anything with FWC. But if we expand or we delete, we then have to go through the FWC process. So
Yeah, but they're not gonna.
quite honestly, I'm not really sure. I can get that answer and get back to you, but I would say it's gonna be, we would have to go through the installation, do the audit, turn it into FWC, and then we get the written final approval. We also then have to do ordinance changes because our ordinance states what we currently have.
Right.
It's just gonna get worse and worse.
Yeah.
I think there's also a danger if this becomes known that votes allowed. That might just change the paradigm.
And quite honestly, with no markers out there right now, the
Yeah.
Pinellas County Sheriff's Office cannot enforce because there is no known marker out there. So when a boat comes up in front of Ocean Sands, for instance, because there aren't any markers there's nothing that anybody can do about it.
But at this point, we can add markers or buoys out to the permitted areas.
We can.
So in the interim, until we get it, from what I'm gathering, to expand the swim zones, but we have, the 4
Or
existing expanded to the 2 miles, but we can add markers to the 4 areas and identify them with buoys or whatever technology is better to, yeah, and space them out a little.
Right.
Well, and what we could do is I back up to the screen is, and again, I'm sorry, and this is down south, I'm sorry, down toward Johns Pass Park where this is from 131st down to Johns Pass Park. But either way, those little dots still represent. So that is a lot. So we could put every other or every third in the interim till we get it. And that would at least identify the swim zone. In the interim until it gets expanded, we have a permit approved by FWC to expand to the 2 miles. And again, determine how to space them. I know our coastline is approximately 10,500 or so square, linear feet. Put one every 300 to 400 feet or 500 feet. If you did it every 500 feet, then that's 20.
Yeah, it looks like a solid line.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sort of curves a little, but yes.
How about putting 2 poles, one on each end of the swim zone with signs on it?
Swim zone?
Entering swim zone, heavily fined, whatever the wordage you want to put.
I like that.
One from Johns Pass coming out.
Yeah, well, there's already a pole there or there's something there already. Well, there's a channel marker, I should say.
Well, there is
I'm
a
not talking
buoy
about
there,
the
but
channel
it's.
marker.
Yeah, no, I know,
can't see it.
but just stating that there's already poles there or pilings in that general area.
And then one from the Clearwater area.
Yeah.
And I think then
Reddington.
you're covered.
Yep.
You know?
Sorry, can you just clarify that? Are you just saying one on each end?
A pole,
Yeah.
a pole or a piling on the north boundary of the city and one on the southern boundary. And then in between, we put, X number of feet, buoys or what, something to keep them there.
You know,
No, it won't be 25 feet.
It'll be 7 feet from the mean high tide line. Yes. Yes.
Oops.
Yes. Past the sandbar. Yeah, it's about 300 feet.
Sort of what
That's.
sort of what that one would look like.
I think with this larger spacing, if you're somehow going back to this buoy route, I think there's a reason that the buoys had to be spaced the way they are, because they're not big enough and they don't send a strong enough message. So that's why I think years ago the permit was to put them as they have laid out there. You're talking about doubling, tripling the length between them. You might as well not even put them out there, if you ask me. I think you need something very concrete, if you will, not concrete.
Well, I will say we obviously did not have concerns visually about buoys.
We have in the past.
So we typically,
We have in the past. We've gotten the same calls that they were ruining the view. Yeah, they were. We actually several times, and it was usually always from the north
we have to
side
put some things. That seems like the solution is to put the buoys, but we'll go there. I think those are great ideas and we'll certainly look to, and we can start to put some of them back in.
And I would say, as somebody said, on a 500-foot area. So like that swim area, you got 1,580 feet. So one in the beginning, one at the end, and one in the middle. I mean, 500 feet. And then the next swim area, so like that's 1,600 feet. So if you have 3 of them there, it's a simple designated thing. If people can't move 20 feet to see the sunset away from the pole, go down the beach a little bit further. And
no, well,
I don't think it delineates per like how many feet in between. Is that what you're asking? Yeah, no, I don't believe so.
I mean, I guess we'll find out, but under the impression that the city created this and FWC said, okay, but I mean, none of us were
FWC,
there when this was created, so.
they just approve the material of whatever the marker is.
Okay. Appreciate the. I haven't heard anybody. I mean, we will have, well, there's one more public meeting. I think we'll have a third one in July, and then there'll be a workshop on July the 24th, a commission workshop to discuss it. And then probably the first meeting in August to adopt an ordinance on first reading establishing the swim zones. Well, I think
If there isn't a marker
you
at a
can pull up
beach,
your boat.
then you can pull up your boat. The marker simply means that it's a designated swim area, that there is no motorized vessels allowed within that area. So if there's no marker, then it's not a designated swim area. So
And
yes.
I will tell you that I have been from here north to Sand Key. And I think there were a couple of areas where like us, where they were missing, but there were not very many gaps until you got up to close to Bel Air Beach. From north of Indian Rocks Beach, there were just longer gaps between, whether they were missing or those you can pull up your boat, but most of those areas are residential. They're not, I think so. And even Sand Key, I guess a little bit of the difference up there is the beach does open up and it does get quite wide. You just don't have as many people swimming, even though Sand Key Park has, I think, 800 parking spaces. I know that all the years I lived up there, people that typically went out to the sand did not like to go out there because it was a much farther walk to get to the water, even though you did have parking, but just never. I can tell you, in Clearwater Beach, you would see boats north pull up pretty regularly. That was a constant thing, and that's where you got into the residential part of Clearwater Beach. So not having lived in Bel Air Shore or Bel Air Beach, I don't know if they get boat or the northern part of Indian Rocks Beach gets all residential. Yeah, I agree.
Recalculate, right? We would do the whole beach, basically.
Correct, right. It's a possibility you spread the 32 buoys over, again, the 10,000 feet, but we'll come up with a calculate and figure out what that would be. And I think get FWCs and probably the Marine Patrol suggestion or other, we'll discuss that further. The last issue, lifeguards, kind of think I know where it might be headed, but again, there's only Clearwater is the only city that has had lifeguards, and the county only provides them at the 3 parks that I mentioned. It has been a struggle to find to personnel, but it does add a significant element of safety in helping to prevent accidents, reduces the risk. I've heard from families. I mean, obviously, most of our visitors would not object if they were there because they're there, and it makes some families feel safer with younger kids, some that may not be as good swimmers, but that all falls back to just being, essentially a responsible parent and always keeping an eye on your kids, especially if they're little. So that's there's equipment and different things. Well, a lifeguard stand, they don't have to be excessively big, and they would be mobile, but yeah, that's part of it is you need something for them to be able to see. So correct.
Maybe an element.
Yeah. I mean, that is about the most crowded part. So we would fund, if we were to create it, it would be funded out of our parking fund. So it would not be any general fund money, so no tax dollars or other fees. It would simply come out of the currently $3 an hour parking. That's what would pay for the entire program. At least two. I mean, possibly, I mean, definitely at Archibald Park and then at Johns Pass Park. And you could add a third one at Stewart Park. But that's the part of the issue is where and how much the staff is really, I mean, the key. No, I don't think they're, I mean, realistically, they're more like, I mean, it depends, 8 to 10 hour shifts. And of course there's seasonal times of the year when you have a lot more people in the water than other times, although it seems like it's been super crowded the last few weeks. Up until last week, there was a little bit of a lull last midweek, but it was very crowded yesterday and last night and today, amount of people that were out in the water. So it's just hard to say. I will tell all the years that I was in Clearwater, it was how to find a balance, when to have them. If initially, when I first started in the late 90s, I believe they were only out there from, I think from November to April, if I recall, but then they expanded the length. And actually it was retracted, the area. There was a tower on the north end that was removed. And so you only dealt a smaller linear footage area along the sand. So there's definitely seasonality to it. Yeah, they would be employees. They would be employees under the fire department, which is eventually what Clearwater did, because I had suggested that a long time ago. Like they were originally in the recreation department, which was kind of an odd place to be, right, Chief?
So I did research going back to 2020, and since in 2019, 2020, 2021, Johns Pass and Madeira Beach was the #1 location for water rescue calls in the entire Pinellas County area, including Clearwater Beach. So at that point, that's when we increased our level of service and got the Marine unit. We got the 21-foot Zodiac. That's helped tremendously. Right now, since 2020, there's been 165 total water rescue calls made just on our 2-mile stretch of beach. And somebody brought it up earlier, the gentleman that passed away 2 or 3 weeks ago would have been in the exact location that we're talking about having a tower. You know, is it utilitarianism where you sacrifice one for the good of many? I mean, I think that there's no better time than right now.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So in this particular case, reading the call notes, speaking with PCSO, they stated that the gentleman and his girlfriend were on a raft and they were floating out. He fell off of it somehow. It was a little bit deeper. He was out further than she was. He propelled himself in the water, waved his arms, screamed help twice, and then was gone. And 5 minutes versus 30 seconds could have made a huge difference. So around 133rd, 135th. Yeah.
So we have had, and I know we had a gentleman last year, just south, he was in front of Ocean Sands.
There was that one as well.
But I think he had a medical condition.
Yeah, we're assuming that he went into cardiac arrest while in the water. And then 2 years ago, we had the paddle boarders. Yep, yeah, exactly.
At Johns Pass.
And that's the exact location where we would want to put a lifeguard tower right there. And until that gets dredged out there, there's 18 signs that say, don't swim. This is not a beach. We have done everything we can to keep people off of there. And once everybody knows, if you're local here, that when you step off that sand, it's a deep, steep, very steep drop into that channel. And at that point, they lost their footing, they're getting swept out, they're gonna fight the current because that's your natural reaction, and then they can only do that for so long.
So is it the fire department, from a safety standpoint, probably recommendation to have?
Yes, because we've discussed, yeah, for safety and just additional and thinking that this is our, well, the beach along with the boardwalk, the village and the boardwalk, obviously the reason people come here and a reason why a lot of people have relocated here. It's our number one resource. And the people who come here, can we add another level of safety? No, I agree. Just to get input, again, just to get input and get, is it something to proceed or not to? How do we, I mean, from my perspective, I think it is something good to do. And we can start it and determine how, how all the details, what it's going to look like, what type of tower, where do we place it? Realistically, we would start on the south end and at Archibald and then kind of work your way. Are you liable because you didn't have a lifeguard 10 blocks away? That's kind of tough to do that. And I think if you speak to any other lifeguard program in the country, they're going to tell you, I mean, no, we haven't. I mean, you can sue for anything almost at any time, but the reality of it is, I mean, you can't see everything at every point in time. I think, Tom, you had got the microphone in the box.
Thank you. So I was a lifeguard for the city of St. Petersburg down in Treasure Island. Municipal Beach is owned by the city of St. Pete. And we used to have 2 lifeguards down there during the summer. When I was in college, you had to be a water safety instructor. You only work 40 hours a week, but then you're going to have extra people covering for the other 2 days. And so, it's going to be expensive. So you're not just talking about 3 lifeguards. You're talking, you got to have relief, you got to have for vacations and sick time. So this is not a cheap thing. And so St. Petersburg had that. They had lifeguards at the city pools. They were water safety instructors who were trained in first aid. And we had relief that way. You're not going to have that. And it was under the recreation department, not the fire department, because that's where it belonged, because they had, with the recreation, with the pools and the parks and things like that. So there's some things you have to consider. This can be very expensive doing this. We have signs posted along the beach, swim at your own risk, no lifeguards on duty. And so, again, the only places that you had is you have in Clearwater Beach, you had down in Tierra Verde, and I don't know if St. Pete still has lifeguards at the Municipal Beach there.
Nope.
And the only reason they put them out there is the year before I started, they had a small child get bit by a shark in like waist deep water. And so then they put up a 15-foot pole out there. We had a lower lifeguard stand and we were up in the higher stand watching that way. So, I mean, there's other considerations you got. So, instead of having 3 people, you might have 6 people on duty, and then you got a lot more things to consider.
So reaching out to Pinellas County, since they do have a lifeguard program, I reached out to them to get some numbers from them. They have an approximate budget of roughly $500,000 a year, and that's strictly staffing. We don't need 52. That they budget for 52 employees, and we're not going to need that many. Initially, getting ATV and lifeguard towers, initially there will be a cost, but then once we get past that first year, maybe every 5 or 7 years, we'll have to replace some items. But
capital costs.
Yeah, capital items. But then after that initial year, it's just going to be essentially staffing.
Yeah, the majority of the cost is personnel, obviously, and yes, you would have, depending on the time of day that you cover, and obviously when there's thunderstorms, they take cover like everyone else. But that's another, is encourage people to get out of the water. People have been struck by lightning out in the Gulf. And so it's a safety enhancement. Is it worth it is, I think, the issue, but it would come from our visitors that come here through the parking. Yes, sir. Oh, hold on. You had your hand. Go ahead, Mary. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say,
Correct. Well, we're looking to, as I said earlier, to raise the parking rate from, it would help pay for that, yes. Mm-hmm. Correct, yeah. Yeah, we put one down at Johns Pass Park. I don't know if anybody saw it last year. We had to replace it 4 times because it got vandalized. But that's where I got it. I was in Cocoa Beach 2 years ago and I saw that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, like Rotary paid for some, yeah, Civitan, yep. Yeah, we wanted to add a couple, but since the first one got destroyed a few times, we were like, now we got.
When we replaced the throwable so many times that it got to the point where it's almost like they were angry there wasn't anything in there and they just went and destroyed the container.
The container as well. Yeah. I noticed in Cocoa they were a little bit higher too. They were a little bit more difficult to try to, you'd have to lift somebody up or somebody that's 7'5". Yeah. So, well, so we do have patrols a lot more now during sunset than we did before because I see them almost every day that I go out and watch sunset. Now I'm typically walking from about 100 and I'll say from 143rd south to about 133rd, then walk north to Archibald and then back typically. And so I'd say the last probably 7 out of the last 10 sunsets that I've been out there in the last 2 weeks, I've been passed by at least one deputy. We did add more patrols in April, March and April, end of February, March into the middle of April, the most. And so we had very few calls because there were more deputies out. We even added a deputy at Archibald Park because we had a resident title her email "Riot at Archibald Park." There was no riot. It was just a lot of kids hanging out at Archibald Park, not doing anything but hanging out. Yes, sir.
I'm in here in the morning at 4:30 in the morning. So whatever's on the beach I make sure is gone. So I make sure that's gone at 5.
But yeah. Not that.
What kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Well, I walk a lot and pick up trash and stuff. So especially during spring break, oh my goodness, everywhere.
Okay, go ahead.
Beer bottles, beer cans. I mean,
drink on the beach.
yeah, I walk in the morning, dogs on the beach, cigarette butts all over the place. So we have all these rules and nobody is enforcing them.
All right, well, what, other than littering, anything else?
Well,
the dogs, I think you said.
dogs, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is I mean, I don't see that much littering and I walk quite a bit and I do walk with my bucket and picker. And even my kids are like, oh, you're not picking up very much. We even have the service groups. There's 3 of them, the Trash Pirates, Trash Turtles, and Coastal Crusaders. And they're getting more and more frustrated because there's very little trash to pick up. Now, granted, they're typically out there Saturday mornings, but it seems to have been now, and yes, they are more focused Archibald Park and around, and then down at Johns Pass Park, probably only up to about 135th. But I haven't seen what you've been mentioning, and I commute to work through the sand, but typically from the county park to Archibald. And now that the Growings work has been going on, we're out there even more. I don't think it's as extensive as I keep hearing from a few residents, but let us know if you do see, because I keep hearing drunks and. Not that.
Typically, it's periodic, more people, more trash, but it's relatively.
I walk Monday and I pick up 2 bucks, and I walk from my place to Dunkin'.
So if there's a specific area that you are seeing that there is more trash, I think most are aware and probably have. We have created a sign that is much like every sign that we have at our beach access. It has the rules on it. So the issue that we have is that it's coming from the condos. It's not typically coming from our public beach areas, which it does. Don't get me wrong. People don't always read the signs. But per our ordinance, it states that every condo owner is to have this posted, but they don't. So what we've done is we've created these signs and have most of them posted at, I'd say a good, I think 20 condos. So I can deliver them. So just let me know.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're definitely, I guess that's the other thing, because so the estimates are that in 2023, about 3.3 million people came to Madeira Beach.
My father's a policeman, right? From New York, very sick place, but I'll tell you, one place you don't want to get in trouble is the river. Because you got always 3 patrol cars, right, in the neighborhood. You got helicopters, you got boats, right? So if you want to, get arrested, take the problem here to Madeira Beach, and you're going to jail. Because the sheriff is never very far away, okay? So it's almost like the Gestapo, okay? Which is good from a.
Yikes.
It's good from a, veteran standpoint. This is probably one of the safest places in terms of police coverage. And, I would. Thank you for that. I don't mean there's businesses, but your school, if you step on the line to do a beach, they're gonna come get you and you're gone.
But what I was alluding to is with the number of people, honestly, in the 2 years that I've been here, I'm surprised we don't have more issues. I mean, the number of calls and concerns that we've received are a tiny, tiny fraction for over 3 million people that are here. We'll look at calls for service. I think our #1 place for calls for service was an establishment right around the corner here, the bar, the Brass Captain. And still, I think they only had, no, I wouldn't even say it was excessive. Maybe into the 20s, the number of, it's a bar, but I mean, what I'm getting at is, and if there are, when calls do come in, there is a very quick response. If there isn't, we need to be, obviously, we know if it's not. Yes.
So back to lifeguards.
That's right.
If we could get some participation from the county to put a lifeguard stand at their county park.
So, yeah.
Would that potentially help? And I mean, because that's probably the busiest spot, I think, and.
The county park, I'd say Archibald gives it a.
Well, I mean, but Archibald used to be, but now it's narrower, so it's not as busy. I mean, but.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, there's only so many.
You're just really close to your neighbor now. You really get.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going a little bit north, a little bit south, because this is what the little pile, I wanted to put this up because I walked by this, my wife and I, and it was early on Memorial Day weekend, I forget, Saturday or Sunday. This is in front of South Ocean Sands Tower. And so I'm like, let's just see what, the trash can wasn't there, by the way, that I moved it later. But so we walked and I'm like, let's see what happens. I'm curious because it almost looks like whoever was there, because they had Tupperware. So I'm like, I wonder if they're going to come back or if we can see somebody and then we can catch them. So yep, few minutes, nothing happened. My wife's like, all right, I gotta go. So I keep walking and 3 residents stopped me and said, hey, did you see the mess down there? I said, yeah, no, don't worry, we'll get it, we'll get it. You know, each one as we went. So by the time I got to the county park, I'd already been stopped 3 times. So then I think Public Works, and I'm like, is anybody still on the beach? That's fine, I'll go back. And so I wheeled over the trash can and I think one person took a picture of moving the trash can down. But anyway, it filled the can. But the interesting thing is that at least they took the time to put it in a trash bag.
So I think we now have the trash cans that have the lids. So in the last few years, we keep trying to change and make our beach cleaner. I think we are the only city locally that has a beach rake that rakes Monday through Friday. Nobody else does that. We've changed over the trash cans. We used to have 32-gallon cans that were open. We had trash everywhere. And it wasn't from the people most of the time. It was from the birds. So these new containers, while they do flip when it's a little bit windy, most of the time it's because they're empty, because they get emptied almost every day as well. So if you have things that you think could help us to make the beach cleaner, please, we're open. We're never going to not have trash. I hope we all know that. It's going to happen.
So Chuck, to your statement about county funding, we do receive EMS funding from Pinellas County EMS, and there has been previous requests made, not from Madeira Beach, but from other municipalities for the county to fund the lifeguard program. And it has not received much traction, but the Clearwater, I feel like is about to make some headway on that because they're looking to incorporate paramedics into their lifeguard program. And then at that point, they're going to have to be under the current medical director. And then once you show the need, the county will probably get on board.
They're getting all the funding. They're getting all the funding from the parking there, which we don't get. So therefore they should be able to give back a little. And I'm just, throwing up an idea.
We agree, me and Robin.
Get all their money from the church. Are you kidding me?
No, I think you were talking about the county lot.
Yes, the county lot.
The county parking lot.
I thought you were talking about Clearwater.
No, he was, I think you kind of got.
The county
that's what I thought as
lot
well.
from Speedway.
But if anybody wants to know anything about Scientology, I'd be happy to spend that 2 hours. No.
I'm sure you do.
That's on a different night though.
But just so one thing related to the county park, we are asking the county to negotiate so we can oversee the parking, split the revenue. The county said 50-50 would be the split, which kind of shocked me because in Clearwater years ago, it was like 70-30. The county got 70, the city got 30. But if we could 50-50 would be good, but the county hardly ever enforces. I live across from the county park behind Speedway and walk through there every day. And finally last week I saw what appeared to be one of the Pinellas County employees writing a parking ticket. Had not seen it in the 2 years that I've been walking by there. But anyway, if we would take it, then we would get more revenue, the ability to issue citations when needed, and the county seems amenable to do that. So that'll come back.
Megan, on your staff, you have any openings?
Of course I do.
Of course you do. Yeah. My next question to Robin is how are you going to man, if this goes ahead, staff, a lifeguard staff? If right now, I've heard Megan complain, $18 an hour with benefits, retirement for a garbage guy, how are you going to, and you're going to need 12 to 15 people.
Correct, yeah, at least.
I think before you go any further, my suggestion to you would be put an ad in the paper and see if you get any kind of, before you go down this foxhole, because everywhere I go, there's signs for employment. And I mean, Madeira Beach has benefits and retirement, and it's 40 hours and it's clean.
Yeah. Well, not all of them would be full-time, by the way.
Yeah, and initially laying out the overview of it, initially it would be a seasonal type of position where you're probably going to get high school students and college students home from the summer, like this gentleman and Tom, I believe. And it's, yeah, the intent is to not go out and spend $500,000 on equipment and then have a program that we can't even staff. Obviously, we're gonna put feelers out there before we even spend anything. And then I feel like it's gonna get some traction. I really do. I feel like it's gonna be a really good thing for the community, for the visitors here. And speaking with Pinellas County again, they have some full-time positions. So they have a lifeguard supervisor and then senior lifeguards, and then the line personnel, that would be the actual ones on the beach minus the supervisor kind of appearing here and there and checking on everything. But I do understand what you're saying, and there is a staffing and recruitment and retention issue, and we're facing it, well, not us right now, but we were facing it at the fire department. And again, I've said it many times, I never thought I would see the day where younger people didn't want to be a firefighter, but unfortunately we did, but we were able to move past that, and we're fully staffed. And I think we have an attractive city to work in. I think that would really play into it as well.
I have to agree with you, but
exactly,
you have 3 cities here, Clearwater, even Treasure Island has a huge budget, has a coffer that's huge. St. Pete Beach, the same thing. Clearwater, you can't even discuss that. We're Madeira Beach. We're only 2 miles long.
Yes, yeah, it's separately accounted for. Oh, yeah, very much so. Yeah, we're. Yep. Yep. Yeah, the additional dollar for parking, the estimate it's about an additional $700,000 in revenue. Well, you said theoretically, but it really doesn't. You could still sue them because it still didn't have, so your liability doesn't really change. Yeah, yeah, you would identify the area, which is what Clearwater does also. I think, and I don't remember seeing anything in Fort DeSoto. I was there 2 months ago, but there was definitely a gigantic stretch of Fort DeSoto Park that did not have a lifeguard, but I don't remember seeing signs that delineated. It just, as soon as you're walking into the public walkway, it said lifeguards present, but you know, then as you walked north or south, you got to a point where there were no lifeguards. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm surprised we haven't been sued because but that's the other side of it, is if you don't, then you could, because you didn't have, it wasn't properly, you know, you signed it, yes, but right. Could you make that argument? I think you could. Yeah. But again, there has been the challenge of the staffing challenge to fill the positions, but we would have to, obviously, you can see on the screen what the other 2 entities are paying. We'd have to be competitive to that. And again, that would be a good 90% of the budget would be just in paying salaries. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you had $6.
Not to mention, we are in the FRS now, so that is very attractive to a lot of people. So that was kind of one of the main reasons why we chose to go into that, was so that set us aside from our neighboring communities, because I think the only other well, I guess it would be under the fire department anyways, but Pinellas County is the only other government agency, I believe, that offers that retirement system, which is fantastic.
Well, I am going to be a little biased. Clearwater has a pretty good one.
The advantage that we have here, mainly on the West Coast, we have gentle sloping beaches.
Yes.
We don't have drop-offs like
Correct.
we might have on the East Coast, except for maybe John's Pass, where we have the issue down there. That, you know, that's our advantage, and that's the reason why you don't necessarily need lifeguards. You post the sign, you swim at your own risk, that type of thing.
They are gentle.
The problem is between the sandbar and the beach. When it's low, real low, it's fine. You walk out, no problem. If you want to swim out the sandbar, you know, there is a deeper area between.
And the gentleman that just passed away a couple weeks ago, he was found in that trough, 20 feet offshore. Yeah, and the slope is one thing, but that's not where the incident is gonna happen. It's gonna happen where they're much deeper, obviously. And and then combine that with a riptide where they can't touch, or they panic. So you're just tiring yourself out. And that's what you want to do, is swim to shore, as opposed to diagonally and get further down the beach and just kind of go with the current. Yes, ma'am.
Are there riptides on your beach?
There have been here recently.
Yeah,
Full moon.
Especially
You
down on the
can see
southern
them.
end.
yeah.
Yes.
When the full moon comes.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Indian Shores. And I've been with JC Resorts for about 13 years now. So I've seen quite a bit on the beach activity. I live here, Jared. And we had a 17-year-old boy that just drowned up
Yeah, a
there.
few months ago. A swimmer. He
Yeah,
was a swimmer.
and he was,
Yep.
it was a swim club. They all came, and I happened to be outside. And they all came at one time. The instructor was there, adults, enough, you know, to watch them all, but it still can happen. They all went in the same time. They all came out the same time. He's the only one that didn't come out. It took a while to find him. But I think
Madeira Beach, we participated in the attempted recovery.
in the recovery, yeah.
We were out there for many hours.
Yeah.
And another point I'd like to make too is your firefighters here in Madeira Beach, they have the fastest turnout time from the time they get the call to the time that boat is moving. The fastest in all of Pinellas County. They take pride in this, and it's almost like it's just not enough. You understand, you know?
It's a shame. You know, they were on a trip together from out of state, and I can't imagine a parent.
Yeah, and actually, while we were sitting here, I did get a message from Visit St. Pete Clearwater from Brian Loeck. He's the executive director, and asking about, because there's been a few more discussions about along the entire coastline to address water safety, or what else can be done.
I think that would be a calling card for more people to want to. They would think safe, clean, safe beaches. And is there any way that they could incorporate mandating rules that would be shared, the cost of lifeguarding, with not only the hotels, motels, but, and I work for the, you know, the privately owned condos, but within their budget, they have room for these things. Now, when the holidays coming up, we've had so much destruction on our preferred, you know, condos. This year, we're putting up a 12-foot fence around Sand Dollar because of the destruction that we've had from people, you know, kids coming for the 4th of July. Yeah, car loads. They just come and drive up and unload.
That's the one that's near the park.
Well, we have a pier. We have one of the.
Yeah, they're Indian Shores.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys just put up, I saw the message board that the sheriffs just put out.
Yeah.
About, the curfew and
It's
fireworks.
last holiday, they almost burnt the pier down.
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
So did the city of so
Yeah.
my first spring here, we got calls from a couple of properties just north of Beach Place. I think Crimson.
Surf style.
Princess?
Princess, yeah.
So a lot of kids gathering after late night. So I asked for additional deputies to patrol the area.
Yeah.
Kind of problem went away. Last year.
We have 9 locations. We have 2 offices, but we have 9 locations for our company. And we take turns, myself included, being on call. That's one person for 9 resorts for any emergencies, internal, external. So, and I had that situation with calling, you know, for reinforcements because.
Well, I meant actually extra duty. So you're paying, so the city of, or town of Indian Shores would pay for additional deputies to be patrolling.
Yes.
Which is what we did here. Problems pretty much went away last year and this year, again, during the heavy spring break.
And all the owners put in for securities. They paid for security. It's not that they didn't have any.
I would encourage approach your city, your town, and say, hey, help us to do that. So, cause that's how we got ours here, is the properties calling. And when I looked, and that comes out of the parking,
budget.
the parking fund. So again, it's not coming out of taxes. It's our visitors that are funding that,
Yeah.
to pay for that additional security and safety. So
I would like to make just one last point about the lifeguards. This is John Mordelite. He's one of our firefighters. He's my numbers and data kind of go to. And over the last 4 years, there's been 37 drowning incidents on our 2 mile stretch of beach. That's a lot.
Oh.
2 miles of beach, 37 drowning incidents in the last 4 years. I think that speaks volumes.
That's a lot.
Chief, I think also you could add into this in terms of how much it would save the city by having lifeguards, save you guys on all your calls
Yeah.
and all that. I mean, you know,
That's
so
part of
there
it.
would be a benefit
Absolutely.
to having lifeguards.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, so ultimately that should be considered in the cost.
Absolutely.
You know, and especially Archibald, because I do believe Archibald has its own funds. And for you
Correct.
guys to try to get to Archibald, that's a long way, unless you go across land, you know, but if it's a water incident, yeah, you
It
gotta
makes
go
sense.
around.
And this is my 22nd year in the fire service, and it would be irresponsible of me to not explore this and bring it to the community.
Any other questions? Again, I appreciate your time coming up. I mean, we're not leaving, but we'd had planned this for 6 to 7:30. If any of you do need to leave, by all means, obviously you can leave at any time, but any other questions or comments? I think we got quite a bit. This was recorded, so we have all of the comments, or just about all of, and sometimes it doesn't pick up without the microphone, but certainly noted a lot of your comments and look to change the swim zones and look for stronger, better, longer lasting buoys and bases and et cetera, the materials to make them last a little bit longer, and identify the swim zones as best as we can. And we're going to start to you'll see buoys going back in, at least in a part of the existing swim zone, so that we can, yeah, we'll order the buoys. And no, right. It'll take a few days to weeks. If at any time anyone has any other comments, please feel free to call, email, text. Our information is on our website. I didn't put it up on the big screen, but.
Those that didn't like the polls, how they gonna feel about the wind turbines?
I'm sorry about the, wind turbines. Well, we're trying to put one probably here at Rock Park as well, where we will start with a wind turbine. So, and 2 cities ago where I was in, we actually had a resident went all the way to the State House and almost got the legislature to allow wind turbines to go in residential neighborhoods. He was going to put up a 30-foot tall wind turbine in the middle of the neighborhood. And yeah, it doesn't quite work. I'm not opposed to them, but I think they have their place. And if anybody has been to Boston, I was shocked. I mean, that's where I went to high school, but you go just north of downtown and there's a giant wind turbine in a very, very urban area, which kind of shocked me, but it's Massachusetts. That's what you get. But either way, yeah. So thank you please take food. I forgot to bring the to-go containers.
A lot of food back
We put them on plates. If you can take it with you. If you wrote on it, I'll certainly, yeah, if you marked them, I'll take them.